TVs and treadmills. It's a real pain, I know, but we can make it really easy. I'm out here to diagnose some problems that this property's been having with TVs, being able to change channels, etc. And so I'm out here to try and diagnose what the issues are, try to get it all fixed up and put back together. There's a couple interesting caveats on this specific one because they have some older trues that seem to work just fine. And then they have some newer trues with the Ignite consoles that have never really worked at all. So we could have some software issues, hardware issues, who knows? But let's dig into it. The first thing we got to do is have all of the cab components, and I'll bring you in closer to take a look at that. Okay, so first things first, what is cab? Cab, I think, stands for cable adapter box. Effectively, you need a way to be able to change the channel on the cable box through the console on the treadmill. And so what is cab? Effectively, it's a remote control. So it's a way for you to change the channel on the cable box without having the cable box remote control. You can just use the channel buttons on the console. So let's look at what are the components of a cab. Okay, so here's a cab box. Effectively, this is what's going to plug into the treadmill in some capacity. This is the IR sensor. So when you press the channel button on the console, this is going to emit an infrared signal to the console, basically acting as a remote control. So you press the button on the console, an IR signal comes out of this IR transmitter right here and changes the channel on the cable box the same way a remote control would. And then you've got all these different adapters and things that you'll need for different applications. Depending on kind of where the cable box is it next to the unit? Is it stored away in a closet somewhere? There's a couple of different ways to install all this, and that's why you get kind of a bunch of stuff. But in order to diagnose it, the best way I've found is to have all of the components, and that way you can kind of change out components one at a time and see have you corrected it. So those are your cab pieces that are going to come with the unit when you buy it. So you're going to buy a cab box and it's going to have all these different components for different types of installations. And we'll go over some of that today. And then based on the facility, you're probably going to need some coax, probably going to need some sort of data cable. I bring a couple of different lengths of each, and I also bring some taps and couplers and things like that so that I can test the different signals and things like that without having to get in deep with, like, you know, dB testers and all of that. We're just going to do it based on component. Okay, so let's start with this treadmill. It's an older true. I think these consoles were called Envision. We'll start it up. And then you have these channel buttons on the console. And so when I press that button, it changes the channel. How does that work? Well, behind the console, we have what's called the cab box. And that cab box plugs into the C-Safe port. And from there goes all the way down through the machine, comes out through that data cable, and goes to the equipment closet all the way over there. We'll get in there later. And that's where the cable box is. So effectively, we have a remote control, right? We have a remote control here that sends that signal. Instead of going from your remote control to the cable box, we're going through the cab box, through the machine, through that data cable, through the wire in the wall, all the way over to the cable box. And that IR transmitter, this guy, is affixed to the front of that cable box. Every time I press that channel button, a infrared signal comes out of that transmitter and tells the cable box change the channel. And so here we are with a newer true. I think this is called the Ignite console. Same setup, right? Cab box connected to the C-Safe, you know, all the way down through the machine, out the network cable, to the wall, all the way over to that equipment room where the cable box is. So let's check this one out. Start up TV. But we don't have channel buttons. I wonder if the cab's not enabled. Let's see, let's get out of this. Go into settings. No, the cab's enabled. So why don't we have cab buttons? Let's see. Yeah, we need channel buttons here. Interesting. I'm gonna have to dig into this. Maybe a software issue? All right, so I'm in here looking at the software. Looks like it has the latest firmware, that 202, but the software is not current. And I know that because I'm in the True Portal here, and I can see it's supposed to be 1.066. So let me get that downloaded and put up onto the machine and see if we have a cable button, or excuse me, a channel button then. All right, so now we've got this console updated to the correct software version, 1.066. So we should have a channel button, which should put us one step closer. Yes, so now we have a channel button, so that's good. Just doesn't do anything. It beeps, but nothing's happening. So this is the point where the best diagnostic approach that I've found is to start working on components. There's some component that's not functioning properly, and that's what's causing the issue. And so because I know that this treadmill is functioning properly, meaning I can turn on TV, change channels, everything's fine, then I know that all of the components in there work pretty good. This one, I'm not sure, something's wrong. And so the first step, I think, will be to move components, or preferably just switch signal from one to the other. Meaning, hey, that cab signal that works on this machine, so this machine hooks up to that jack, which goes to a specific cable box. Well, if I disconnect from there, right, and plug into there, which is what's connected to the treadmill that's not working, well then I should be able to push the channel button on this. Remember, the cab is just a remote, so I should be able to push the channel button on this and change channels on that. And if I do that, then effectively I've said, hey, everything in the wall from there on is good. There must be something going on in the machine. So I'm gonna set that up first and we'll try that. All right, so now I've got the cab system from this treadmill plugged into the wall that controls this treadmill. And that's why I like to bring kind of all the different components so that I have really long wires and things that I can jump signal and whatnot from. So the cab on this treadmill, right, plugged into the back of the console, all the way through the treadmill, spits it out right down here. And now I've plugged that into the wall that controls this treadmill. So if I change channels on this treadmill, it should change the channel on that treadmill. Let's see what happens here. So there's the channel button on this treadmill, and you can see that channel is changing over there. So what does that tell me? That tells me that the systems from that jack all the way back to the electrical closet where the cables are, the cable boxes, everything works fine. So the issue with this treadmill not changing channels has to do, it's somewhere in this treadmill. So time to kind of break more components apart and test each component one by one. All right, since we already have a different cable plugged into the wall that controls this treadmill, it's probably easiest to just start right there, just to make sure that this cable isn't the issue. So let's get rid of that. Plug in there and see if we can control it now. That did not correct the issue. Okay, so we'll move on to the next component. So the next component that's easiest is probably swapping out the actual cab itself. So the cab from that treadmill over there, I know is working properly. That one changes the channel, everything's functioning normally. So I should probably swap that out with this one to see if this cab is the issue. So disconnect it there and there, pull that one, come over to here, disconnect this cab, put that in right there, okay, plug that in. Okay, so now let's see if we get action. Whoop. Now we're changing channels. So that means that this cab is not functioning properly. Something's up with this cab. Let's dig into that. All right, so first off, these cabs, when you buy them, they'll ask you like, what kind of treadmill are you installing it on? And what cable provider do you have? And so obviously we are True and Cox. And so they will set these up based on that. And inside here, this is the one that I know works. Inside here is a bunch of dip switches that set up all of that programming. So let me crack this open. And you can see all these little dip switches in here. Those all need to be set based on the manufacturer of the equipment and the cable provider. So let me first check and see if maybe that is where the issue lies. So compare these. Let's see. Oh yeah, they're totally different. So the correct one, dip switch 1 should be up, 2 is down, 3 is down, 4 is down, 5 is up, 6, 7, and 8 are down. Okay, now that I've made that change, let's see if that helps. All right, so I've got that just kind of installed temporarily. Let's see if we get TV now. Got it. So that was the problem on this one. The cab itself was not set up properly. So you really do need to have like multiple units or multiple components that you can kind of swap in, swap out. It's not the best way to diagnose, but process of elimination is sometimes the way to get where you're going. So now that we've got this one going, I can start working on the rest. So I'll check back in. All right, so now I want to check this one. This one, the cab system is not working either. So let me start by just double checking. We do have channel buttons on this one, so we're a step above the last one, but nothing happens when I press channel. My guess is that the cab box itself was probably not programmed properly either. So that's probably the first place I'm just gonna start. That was the issue on that one. It's probably the issue on this one too. It's a pretty easy check. So I'll just go in and double check that and I'll let you know. Okay, the cab on this one was also functioning normally. So I took that all apart, make sure the dip switches are set up properly. Everything seems to be working right. All the cables are connected. So I think the next easiest thing is just to check this data cable plugged into the wall here. So let's get rid of that. Plug in down here. And see if now we have cab functionality. Got it. So this one had a different issue. The cab was all set up properly. All the software and everything was good, but the data cable going into the wall was no good. So you gotta have all the components be ready to test. Okay, so let's check this one now. First of all, see what's happening. We do have a channel button, that's good. The noise is also good, but nothing's happening. So, let's see here. Probably a similar issue, meaning maybe the cab is not set up properly. Except that I'm seeing that same data cable from the last treadmill, that same gray data cable. And you know what? Now that I look close, this was like some custom built thing. You can see there's only one pair in there. So I wonder if maybe this was for some other application and somebody plugged it in here and it doesn't work for this. So I'm gonna change out this data cable as well and see if that corrects the issue. All right, so I'm gonna use a brand new data cable for this one and hope that was the problem. Excellent. All right, 3 down, 1 to go. Okay, let's start this guy up. Okay, this one seems to be functioning just fine. So my guess on this is that you sometimes will get a report that's like all the TVs aren't working, or like the treadmill TVs aren't working, or something general like that. My guess is that that's the case here. 3 of the 4 weren't working properly, and so it's easier to say like the TVs aren't working than it is to say all the TVs aren't working. But at any rate, testing is important before and after. Components, changing them one at a time, and testing after each change is important. And that way you can kind of isolate where the issues are. And once you've identified a common issue, sometimes that will play through one to the next, especially when it comes to cab. But let's take a look at that equipment closet as well and see how the other end of all this system looks. Okay, so those jacks on the wall all come back to this equipment closet. And you can see that all of the cable boxes are hung up on the wall, kind of numbered, right? Maybe, I don't know if you can see that or not. And all of the wiring is kind of a huge mess. But effectively what you have is you have a piece of coax at the jack on the wall behind the treadmill that comes all the way back to this closet and screws into the cable box. On the front of that cable box, you have the cab IR sensor. You can't see it there because it's covered sort of with tape, but you can see the little wire off to the side where that IR transmitter comes in. See a little wire coming off to the side by that number 2, and then they've got it tie wrapped on there so that it doesn't fall off and it's positioned in the right spot. So when you press the channel button out at the treadmill, that signal comes all the way through the wiring, all of that, and lands at the IR transmitter on the front of each cable box and changes the channel for that box. And all of that is controlled by the cab at the treadmill, but by keeping all of the cable boxes and stuff back here in the closet, kind of keeps it a little clean, because otherwise all of this wiring is at the treadmill, right? So it just kind of cleans up all the wiring, keeps it minimal, puts all the mess back here in the closet. So the only thing that might be different is if that cable box was at the treadmill, then you wouldn't have that jack on the wall as an intermediate. It would go from the treadmill directly to the cable box is where that sort of IR system or cab system would hook up. So hopefully that all makes sense and does everybody some good. If you have any questions, reach out to me directly. Ruben Hand, 602-828-1426 or fieldtechfitness.com.